Hello and welcome to the Weekly Scroll podcast brought to you by the Adventure Archive. My name is Ryan, and with us we have our, we were trying to decide this earlier, still quite special, but now almost regular guest, Kirby of Disaster Tourism. How you doing today, Kirby?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for having me yet again.
We love having you here. A wonderful insight, wonderful creator. Listen, if you're listening to this and you haven't checked out Disaster Tourism games from Kirby, you should definitely go check all of their stuff out. What's the website? DisasterTourism.games, right?
.games, yeah.
Boom. Doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah.
.games is such a good dot to have for games.
It is a great dot, yes, for sure.
Yeah. That's nice.
I was lucky it was there.
Yeah. I wonder what else is there. You should probably snag stuff.
There's a lot. There's .catgirl. That's an actual TLD. Yeah, I almost bought one because just because I thought it was fucking amazing.
Hey, listen, you got to do what you got to do, but I would not hold it against you if you had Kirby.catgirl. So today we're talking about a game. I think I might have recommended this one, but you were like, "Oh fuck yeah, that's a good one." I think this one, and it is going to be Pacts Blades from Lucas Rollum. This is a kind of like rules light, OSR inspired, more cocky and fantasy that we're gonna go over today. It's a little slim but wonderful, which was my nickname in high school. But yeah, before we get into that, I know there's a little something called the Dead Horse.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell our audience about that?
Sure, yeah. So we got the Dead Horse magazine issue 1 is coming out, or is not coming out yet, but it's coming out soon. And submissions are actually closing on Monday, May 1st. So if you're interested in submitting something to the Dead Horse, it is TTRPG adjacent, so it does not have to be TTRPG related at all if you don't want to, and it's basically just anything you want to write: fiction, poetry, game entry, if you want, setting, photographs, art, drawings, whatever, and you can send them to submissions at disastertourism.games.
Is there a theme for episode 1?
Yes, so the theme, I'm sorry, I should have known that. Issue 1, the theme is uncanny horror. It's kind of looking like the magazine's just going to end up just being a horror magazine in general. But this is a full-fledged magazine of submissions from people from all over the place. And we got, I think, over 40 submissions almost now. So we got a lot to pick through, which is great. So really excited.
That's what's up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you would like to do the submissions, go to exactly where Kirby said. And as that, hits release and whatnot, we will be talking about that here on the Weekly Scroll too, because we are definitely looking forward to that. So again, that closes Monday. So go check that out. And if you write anything in that genre that is TTRPG adjacent, you should definitely submit to that. You might see the Weekly Scroll in there a little bit. Maybe not submission, but in other ways. So we'll see. And then I think I'm gonna click this forward. There's one thing I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about before we get into this, just because I was so excited for it. I'm even gonna kick to another a window here for it. Even though I think your window's gonna be messed up when we do. No, it's fine. Look at you. Wonderful. You're beautiful. I wanted to show off this little bad boy. This is Wormhack from Feral Indie Studio, Charlie Fairgraves. This kind of burst out of nowhere. Charlie put up like a piece of art and was like, maybe I'll make a game. And it was like, hey, I made a game. And then it was physical, and then it was in my house. I think that all took like 2-3 weeks. So really awesome. I'm going to turn the blur off a little bit on this because I always forget to. Filling time. There it is. So beautiful piece of art on the front. This is a small-scale fantasy war game with role-playing elements of Dungeons and Decrepitude, light rules for ease of play, verminous characters, cooperation or competition, adventure and scenario compatible, monsters, magic, and more. This is a great little zine. I really love this. I love the like quasi wargamey elements in tabletop role-playing games. And if you've never seen Charlie Furgrave's art, it is crazy good. Really, really love their stuff. And it's just a great little zine. It's all the stuff you need for really rules light play, exploration, and all that. So it's a beautiful little thing. Was very excited for it. Definitely worth it. And really hope there's more content for that. I think they're itch funding some stuff to do more content for it. So you should definitely go check out Feral Indie Studio and Charlie Furgrave's stuff. And there's some money at that so we can get some more content. But I just wanted to show that off a little bit because it's beautiful. And look at the color. For those in podcast land, you got to check this out just for this color.
That green is beautiful.
Oh my God, it's so good. And even like when it printed, it's so like robust. Like it's just a really, really beautiful, like it's a chartreuse, you know, that's what it, it's gorgeous. So anyway, that is Wormhack. It looks wonderful. Very, very excited for that. Very glad to have it in hand. I think we will 100% be talking about this on the podcast at some point. And in fact, I might have got like 3 copies, one for me, one for Hunter, and then this other one in my hand here to give away when we talk about it. So not on the schedule yet, but it will 100% be there sooner than later. So Wormhack, Charlie Fairgraves, Feral Indie Studio, check it out. And I think that's about all we got to get the stream going.
Oh, my name's Hunter.
Where? Oh, on that window. I forgot to change one window. You know what's funny?
I just noticed that too.
One of the last times you were here, I left Kirby on for like 3/4 of the episode before I realized, oh wait, this is Hunter.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that.
Yeah. So so you got to be Hunter momentarily. But yeah, I think that's it. So why don't we just hop into Pacts and Blades? You ready for this?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's fucking do it. Game read through right here. So Lucas Rollam's Pacts and Blades. It's more Cockian fantasy. I really, really love the cover art. This windblown bearded man, and then on the zine itself, it's a whole scene of this bearded person on a boat battling a creature. I believe they're like swooping down from the sky. There's like spears striking into them and stuff. Really great piece of art.
Yeah, it's very cool.
I wonder who did their cover. It doesn't specifically list it.
Yeah, I think it's all public domain. Yeah.
This was a great use of a piece of public domain art.
It sells the book, like honestly. When I saw it, that was one of the reasons I wanted to pick it up, was because of the cover.
Same. And you before we get going, what is your experience with this game? Because like I said, when I said, hey, how about this, you were like, oh yeah, absolutely. What made you want to jump on this one and read through this one here?
Well, this was probably the first like actual like rules light OSR like zine that I read. I had, I owned Morkborg and the Black Hack and Troika and various other so on quote unquote like rules light OSR games, but those are books. Like there's lots and lots of pages with lots and lots of content in them. And I think this was probably one of the first, probably not the first, but one of the first OSR zines that I read that was just a full rule set within just, I don't know, what is this, like 20 something, 30? Okay, it's 36 pages. But yeah, and when I read through it, I was just like really impressed with how minimalist it was, like extremely so. But even so, the task resolution system that we'll talk about in a little bit, like it has this like very reminiscent crunchy feel to it, you know.
Mhm.
Um, and it leaves room for lots of narrative play, which I think is very cool. That's not always my favorite thing, but I do actually really like the way that it works in this game. And it inspired me to write Weird, which was kind of one of the other reasons why when you mentioned it, I was just like, oh, fuck yeah, let's talk about that one. That was a fucking good game. So,
That's up, yeah,
yeah.
because Weird is a great game. Um, if you haven't checked it out from Disaster Tourism, you will find it on disastertourism.games. But great game that's got some great content coming out for it too. So it's really neat that this inspired that. And as we go through, if you've read both, you'll see a little bit of that. So that's really neat. It was cool when you said that because I was like, well, then yeah, that's exactly what we're gonna do then.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then Lucas Rollum is good people. Just definitely check them out on the tweeters
sure.
and whatnot. But so going in, as we said, the cover is beautiful. You know, this probably, I think it's public domain art, like they said. Really fantastic, really vibrant, really sets the mood for what you're planning to get. And here at the bottom it says a minimalist sword and witchcraft RPG for campaigns and quick sessions. So I really like the end pages here. This design use, it's just like dark reds and oranges and blacks. It almost reminds me a little bit of like Blood Under a Microscope. Kind of.
I was just thinking, yeah. It's
But
like
definitely
magic, but also blood. That's
Yeah.
kind of what I'm looking at when I see it.
But I like how dark it is. I like the tones, how it's very almost like maroon red and like a dark orange. Like it's really dope. Edited by Wayne, I'm gonna say Canepa. And I believe I'm gonna scroll all the way to the bottom real quick just to make sure I'm not completely wrong. Yeah, graphic design from Gontijo.
Yeah.
So who does amazing stuff on everything. So that was cool to see them on this project. And then we get to this introduction. Great piece of art here again, with introduction kind of overlaid on it in white, which like links into the white page, which I really like the way that that's done throughout the book. So, as Kirby said, this book's only like what did you say, 30 something pages, maybe?
I think it's 36 minus the cover.
Yeah, and there's not, I mean, yeah, there's not a lot on each page. If this was like, you know, size 12 double lined, this thing would be like 10 pages. But
Easily,
but regardless, it's a nice little light system. So Pacts Blades is a genre-influenced RPG combat and advancement system about slaughtering bizarre monsters from the depths with blades and making pacts with mystical spirits to channel magic. As a minimalist RPG, there are no rule systems for initiative, movement, tracking, time, equipment, prices, etc. It is up to the judge to determine these things, perhaps with input from the players, and decide how to rule on such things as they arise and as appropriate to each scenario. So this definitely feels more like a framework from which to build upon as opposed to a complete game, which is kind of how Word works as well.
Yeah. I like that. You know, as I was rereading this, I was remembering what was inspiring me to come up with the concepts that I had for Weird, and that was a big one right there. It was just that, like, a lot of these, and it was as I was learning these concepts of OSR play and OSR thought. You know, it's kind of like this internal game loop and all these. I've talked about this stuff a lot before, but like those things being just left to the table to decide are it's such a nice lack of rule. Like I love that stuff.
Yeah, I really like having games like that, but I don't think I'm capable of making a game like that because it makes me just go, ooh, wait, I need to do just a bit more. And then it turns into something bigger than it needed to be. But, you know, regardless, I love having that framework from which to build because I really like doing that. You know, for me, sometimes it can be a little difficult to start from scratch, but the second I get like a seed, I can just run with it, which is really nice. So frameworks like Weird, frameworks like this, it's like I can see using this and exactly what I would add as I'm reading it. I would go, ooh,
Yeah.
I could do this with that. I could do this with that. So it's really nice to have. So that's the introduction, and then more art. I love these like just pitch black circles all over the art. Like it's very like, I don't know why it feels very evocative to me, but I love this like
book have that? Because mine doesn't. I wonder if I have a previous weird. I think I have a previous version of the book.
Shit. Maybe you got like first
Because
first
I did
run.
notice there was actually a font error in this print. And I wonder if he re-released it.
Where did
anyway.
you see an error?
On the task resolution chart, in the little grayish blue thing, it says partial success, but there's a font error in mine where
It says S77.
oh, mine has SXX success.
Oh,
that's so wild.
Oh, where is it? Here. Mine has you probably can't, it's all blurred out, but it says like P, and then the A has a little thingy on it, and the I has a little dot on it, and then it says S77. Yeah. So yeah, yours says SXX, mine says S77. Huh,
That's so weird. Yeah.
So clearly it's two different printings. Interesting.
Yeah, I've had a couple of weird little like font errors in here, and I was like, I wonder if they've reprinted this. Like, I was actually thinking that earlier this morning or this afternoon when I was reading it again, and I was, but yeah,
I didn't even notice that the multiple times I've read through this. Maybe because I primarily have read the PDF, but it's interesting. I'm curious what would create that. I assume in export, if there was like a font you didn't have in the export, or when it goes to PDF or something, or didn't like pull it correctly, it would do that. But anyway, so let's immediately look at something real quick. Do we have bookmarks? We don't. It's only 30 pages, so that's not a huge knock. You don't really need them for something that's 30 pages. And there is not a table of contents on the zine this small, which I mean, I'm not gonna do too big of a knock on that, because as it being only 30 pages, as we said, even within those 30 pages, there's maybe 10 pages of actual stuff. Because, you know, as you get to page 5, right, it is half a page of art, and then it is literally 3 sentences.
Yeah.
You know, and this, I love this. So like, here's some of the thing with layout, right? You either have something where there is like little white empty spaces on a page that could easily be filled with like a little piece of art, or there is big space on a page that you fill with just a little bit of words. And I like either one is fine, but when you have like a page that's mostly filled and you have a little blank section, that to me is something you could fill, versus like this where you have just a little bit of wording on a big page. So like, this reminds me of like Into the Odd, the way that the word pages on that work, or even like when we read Himbos. Himbos has big kind of empty pages with like little blocks of text on it. They're like not like necessarily dead in the middle, and I like that style where it's like minimalist in the style.
Yeah, it's a good way to reinforce the game style, which I think is it's great.
And I think it puts some emphasis back onto that half page piece of art too. It allows that to really like give you more vibe, you know? Yeah, so characters can choose to follow aspects of 2 paths, the path of the Pact or the path of the Blade, hence Pacts and Blades. You may advance in either path, but during character creation as well as throughout the campaign, both during character creation and as well as through the campaign. Path advancements will occur as a result of training, role-playing, and as part of adventures. Again, really nice choice of art throughout here. The thing that sometimes gets me with using public domain art is the inconsistency in styles can sometimes be kind of, you either need to go crazy so it's a million different styles, or it needs to be like so similar you can't really tell the difference, because kind of anywhere in between there, when like you try to get similar and it's not quite there, it feels like you notice that, right? And I like to not notice if it's different people. But this piece of art is great across a spread. It's like a woman on a sitting on a rock with a sword stabbing what looks like a giant frog right in the mouth, and is bleeding. And this page is for advancement. So advancements are the basis of customizing your character, and they should occur 2 to 3 times per session. It is up to the judge to give players opportunities for advancements to occur. You begin play with 1 advancement in either path of your choice. See each path for more information. So, Pacts or Blades? What would you go with?
If I was making a character, I would pick Pact.
Nice.
I find Magic to be, usually it's a bit more complex, but I like especially in the rules light games, the extreme open-endedness of Magic, or in a lot of rules light games. I love being extremely creative, or attempting to be extremely creative, and I often find that open-ended Magic systems like this one offer a lot of opportunities for that kind of thing.
Yeah, I really like systems that use like non-Vancian, like that allow you to, it's the like Magic is more a guidance that you can build upon as opposed to restrictions on something. Like I feel like games like 5e, where it gives you a spell list and gives you all the very specific ways in which you can do it, and the range in which you can do it, and the tools you need to do it, and the exact outcomes for which you do it at the levels in which you do it, is so restrictive. It's so restrictive. So like you said, I think the rules light Magic that lets you kind of just go off feels really cool. And I think this one does a really good job of that. So
yeah, for sure.
Examples of advancements: you find a tome describing a new pact with the spirit of the fair world, that is a pact advancement, or you receive training from an expert mercenary in fighting dirty with daggers, that is a blade advancement. And then the task resolution system. I wouldn't mind advancements being a little bit later in the book. I mean, again, you read the whole book as one and then you come back to it. But I think if this was a little bit farther after character creation and after even like the task stuff, I'd understand like the basis for which, like how much advancement you need to advance. Yeah. But
yeah, I think that's valid. But I also feel like it's such a, it's like, the rules are so simplistic that it almost makes sense to put this right after you talk about how pacts work and blades work with your paths, because it's like just the next part of that. You know what I mean? Yeah. I feel like if it was a whole other section with like a few pages of rules, then maybe, but I don't know.
Well, and you know, again, it's only like 30 pages with really 10 pages of information on it. So like the order in which it's done, it's less important than if this was like an 8-page book and, you know, it took you 40 pages to get to something. You go, oh, that's a rule. That would have been nice earlier. So the task resolution system. So this is what you really like about the game, or something that you've said a couple of times. Do you want to read this one for us and tell us why you really like the task resolution system?
Yeah. Pacts and Blades uses a sliding 2d6 task resolution system. Tasks are divided into 4 difficulty tiers and their default reference value numbers: easy, average, hard, and impossible. A task's default reference value is always 3 times its difficulty. Tasks can include attacking an enemy, sneaking past a guard, negotiating with a pirate for passage, climbing a tower, and more. I'll just keep going with the next paragraph. Core mechanic: when attempting tasks, players simply roll 2 6-sided dice together and add the total of both dice. Success is determined by how well they roll in relation to the task's reference value. A task's RV is a precise measure of its difficulty to achieve. While each difficulty tier has a default reference value for total success, this value can be lowered or raised during the game through path abilities and narrative advantage. When a reference value is changed, the range of partial success is also changed. Consult the task resolution table to determine the new ranges for success and failure. So I like this, the system here. The only thing that I don't like about this is I feel like it almost overcomplicates itself. Just a little bit. Like the table is extremely helpful if any of those numbers were actually necessary. But like if I was gonna make this, I would just put like for a difficulty of 2 in the first column there, 5+ would be an RV. In the second column, 6+ would be the RV. You know, like I feel like, and I'm not knocking this at all because the table looks like a Rollmaster table, and it's gorgeous, and it gives you that feeling of the crunch that you want when you are trying to like emulate one of these types of games. But I do think it just overcomplicates itself a little bit in how it's presented, but the actual play itself is not complicated at all. And the only other thing I have an issue with, so to speak, is calling something a new term, like reference value. And there's a couple other games that I've read recently where they have like come up with their own new like 2-letter acronym for their like difficulty thing. And this is a personal thing. You don't really have to do that. Like it doesn't take anything away or add anything, in my opinion. Either way, it's just for me personally, I'm like, just, you know, you don't have to come up with a new thing that somebody has to learn what the RV is now, right? You know, but that's my personal feelings on that.
Yeah, so specifically for reference value, reference value doesn't bother me because I feel like you're referencing the chart, so it's like a reference value. That's fine. Yeah. What gets me is I agree like 80% of the time that if a term already exists, it's okay to just use that term.
Yeah.
But it doesn't bother me when they use a new term. What bothers me the most is when they use a new term that has an abbreviation that already exists. So like HP for hit protection will never not bother me because like HP already exists. So with reference value, since it doesn't exist in my mind already, plugging a new thing in doesn't bother me. But having to like take something out to plug a new piece in that has the same thing gets me, because like hit protection could just be called armor protection and that would make my brain work better. But calling it
well, then it'd be AP, and that's action points in Final Fantasy. So
yeah, but that doesn't work, and like AP doesn't exist in ttrpg, so I'm fine with that. But you know what I mean? Like I don't mind new words if it's a new abbreviation. Yeah, but so that didn't really, like, I totally get where you're coming from. It didn't register, but I can see how that's a thing. Yeah. I would say a couple of things. One, 2d6 is my favorite fucking game set dice ever, period. Like if you've never read 2d6 from Adam Vass, it's a great tiny little zine. I highly recommend you all look into it. It is Adam Vass just kind of like waxing about how fucking awesome 2d6 is and how there's like an infinite number of fucking ways you can use 2d6 as a system. Like this is, so for example, you can use the classic Powered by the Apocalypse 2d6 mixed success with kind of like set numbers. You know, you can use Necronalis uses 2d6 in an interesting way with like doubles is like crits and all sorts of stuff. Fucking all of the Soul Muppet stuff with Orbital Blues and Best Left Buried. A bunch of games use 2d6 but have like a lot of them are like a set 9 difficulty, and above 9 is success, below 9 is a failure. There's a million ways to do it. This is an interesting way to do it. I like it. I want to play it, but in this kind of the same vein you were talking, I feel like there's almost just the smidgest bit of over design in this where like if something honestly is less than a 3, I don't even feel like there's a need to roll for it. It's one of those things where like I would never have someone roll for like a DC 5 on a D20. You know what I mean? So like I feel like on the far ends of this, it gets a little bit out there as far as like partial success, for example, on like the 2 difficulty is just a 4, and then failures are 3s and 2. It's such a narrow margin, and if you have any like, and then on 2d6, like the lowest you could possibly roll is a 2. So what you have is like the low, like basically a crit fail, 1 above a crit fail, and then you hit your success levels. So statistically, even if you have a +1 to anything, it's like pretty hard to fail. So again, this is a game that I'd really love to sit down and do with. I know we've talked about side quests a bunch, where I really want to play this, really feel the mechanic a little bit more. But I feel like I don't see why you couldn't just do like kind of almost get rid of the RV and just do like the mixed success with like, you know, at 7 and 10 and stuff like that, and it would kind of like roll into the same
literally
area.
even, I mean, he references the actual difficulty and what the on page 8, like literally what the actual requirement for a total success is, right there in the paragraph. So it wouldn't have been hard to add a second paragraph of, or even kind of take away the chart and add a paragraph that is just like, here's what an easy is, partial success, failure, you know, total success kind of thing. And like, listen, I like the chart. I think it's cool looking, and it makes sense. It doesn't not make sense. I just, like I said, I feel like it just overcomplicates itself in presentation. Honestly, it's not even about the mechanic itself.
Well, and then the flip side to what I just said, to argue the point I just made, is referencing another game that I mentioned a second ago, Himbos. Added it's a D20 system, but one of the things I dislike most about D20 systems, and one of the things I love about 2d6 systems, is in D20 system every roll is a 5% chance. So you can be the greatest person in the world at something and fail at the same percentage as someone who is the worst person in the world at it can succeed to a point. You know what I mean? Like the range is so big that 5% is 5%. With 2d6, since you have a bell curve, everyone has kind of this level of like ability, and then anything you do beyond that is exponentially more important, because like a +2 on a 2d6 system is huge. So being better at it feels bigger than 5. But what they added in Himbos, what Max Lander added in Himbos, is this window of partial success to a D20 system that I really loved. What's interesting about this specifically, and talking about the mechanic, not the presentation like you just said, is it's kind of a mix of a couple of things I said earlier about 2d6, where instead of it being like a flat mixed success system, you have the kind of like difficulty value setting of like a best left buried, but instead of it just being a 9, you have like this, exactly what it is, this kind of stacked difficulty level, and then a window of partial success versus failure that I do enjoy a little bit. I think it's just a little bit starker on a 2d6 system versus a D20 system, because the window, even if it's bigger, is smaller, right? Because the window, as I said, at the lowest is 1 number, and the window at the highest is like 4 or 5 numbers. So it feels, like I said, it's interesting. I'd like to see it play out. I love partial success. It's interesting to have a mix of those two things, where you have a tiered difficulty level with a tiered window of partial success and a tiered window of total success. It's just interesting using, you know what, I almost think that a 2d10 system with this window, so there's just a little bit more range, would be an interesting tweak to this. But again, I love 2d6. This is really interesting. I like the mechanic. I like how unique the mechanic is. I would want to sit down at the table, I think, just as from a strictly like theoretical this side versus that side perspective. That's what I'm curious, whether it's just the tiniest bit over designed, or whether it's fucking perfect. But this is one of the things we got to play for it. Any thoughts, feelings, or emotions about that?
No, I totally agree. I used to definitely be in the same boat as you as far as the swinginess of the 5% on a D20. But now I'm back on that. I'm back on the other boat where I like the swinginess because it makes things more unpredictable, which I
Mhm.
think is more fun personally. Um, Not necessarily less predictable or not unpredictable, but less predictable. Um,
Right.
but it depends on the game. Like I feel like with a 2d6 system, especially if you're looking at like a PBTA style narrative game, it makes sense when if you want your characters to be good at specific things. It would make sense that a dice system would support that with a bell curve
Mhm.
type roll, right? Or even one of the reasons I really like Fantasy Age a lot. I don't know if you've ever read Fantasy Age by Green Ronin, but it's a really great uh D&D kind of offshoot, I guess. It's not really an offshoot, but it's like their own version of it. But it uses a 3d6 system, and it's fantastic. I have all of the books for Fantasy Age. Like it's one of my favorite RPGs. Um, and their whole thing with that was designing a game that was specifically tailored with a system that supports a character that is good at a thing that they're supposed to be good at,
Mhm.
and I like that a lot. But well, now that I've kind of gone off and done my own thing, I've gotten to the point where I really like the unpredictability or less predictability of a character's success because of where they are and what they're doing. Right?
Yeah.
Like if I'm in a dungeon fighting monsters, even if I'm pretty experienced, it's still going to be pretty unpredictable on what the outcomes might be. So,
Yeah.
but
No,
anyway, I waxed
I
eloquent
completely.
long enough for that.
No, yeah, no, I completely. Well, I mean, this is the core mechanic of the entire game, so I think spending a lot of time on this is
Yeah.
neat. I totally get where you're coming from. I mean, and I know that like Hunter's a big fan of. I think D20 roll under is Hunter's
Mhm.
bread and butter. That's his favorite. 2d6 is mine, and I totally get like the swingy aspect of it. I think that the what I love the most about like the 2d6 system, especially one like this, is the partial success for me is the perfection where
Yeah.
like you can always fail forward as a GM in a D20 system, but partial success, like the fail forward aspect, is ingrained into the mechanic of the game, and I think that's what
Yeah.
really stands out to me versus having an impetus on, kind of like, all right, you didn't hit your number,
Coin flip. Yeah.
kind of feel. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so the core mechanic of the game, as we said, really comes down to 2d6 and then a tiered level of success with a tiered level of partial success added to it. Which again, really interesting. And I think I'd be curious to run this game and then run the exact same game adapted to a 2D10 system for just a little bit bigger window. And
Mm.
I'd really like to see how that plays out. I also want to sit down and go through like some 2D20 games because I've read some of those and I like those. Those are interesting. So
Mm.
but yeah, so that is the core mechanic. That's what really gets this game moving forward. And again, as we said, this is just theoretical chatting and stuff like this. I don't really have a critique necessarily for this at all. I just think it's interesting to look at. I'd be curious to talk to Lucas a little bit about the intent and what they wanted to do with this. Or what inspired them to want to do like the tier 2d6 system, a post PBTA game, if you will.
Yeah.
But yeah, and also the art has moved into in this section, which I dig that it's kind of like section by section into kind of like a wood carving background for that, and there's still some
Have
consistency through each section.
Have you noticed that he reuses the art,
I
the
mean, it's
task
like,
resolution system, and then this next page are the same, and the following page are the same piece of art. And
is it the
then
same? Is it just like
yeah,
different parts of it?
and then yeah, it's different parts of it. And then the next section, Path of the Blade, the next I think 2 pages are the
Uh
same,
huh.
and then after that, the next 3 pages are the same piece, and then after that, I think that they're different after that. But yeah,
Oh,
it
you
was
know what?
interesting. I had never noticed that until like literally a minute ago when I was flipping through it again, and I was like, oh my god.
I think that's really fucking clever to use, because one of the things I just said earlier was like, I don't like when there's like a lack of inconsistency. So to take a big piece and to just use chunks of it is so smart, because it's literally you can't get more consistent than literally the same piece of art. That's really clever. That's a really nice
very cool.
It's a really smart way to do that. Nice catch. So going on to the next, so this is a little bit more of an explainer on the system that we just talked about. So maybe it'll say, everything I just said was dumb. But there's a section on 1d3. If you were ever told to roll a 1d3, simply roll 1d6, then divide the result by 2, then round up. When you roll a d3, how do you do it?
I use my DCC 1d3.
It's a cop out.
I just roll a d6 and then I just do the math real quick in my head. Like, 1 and 2 is 1, 3 and 4 is 3, 2, 5 and 6 is 3. But I also just use my DCC D3.
I almost bought a box of a thing of DCC the other day, because I got in my DCC Dying Earth.
Nice.
Did you happen to snag that?
No.
Remind me to show that to you after the stream. We should show it off on stream sometime, because damn, people went hard on those stretch goals, and those boxes are pretty. We'll show that off on next episode or something. It is we need to read DCC at some point. Now that we did Hyperborea, a nice big fat game, I feel like we can do like a bigger. That's the only thing that's kept us is games like that are like so fucking big to try to fit into one episode. When we can do 2.5 hours on a 20-page zine, it's hard to do 2.5 hours on a 600-page book,
I mean, well, the good thing about DCC is it's only actually like 30 pages of rules.
Yeah. And the rest of the book is just magic.
Yeah.
So 1d3. If you're ever told a 1d3, do what we said before. So task difficulty tier, and reference value for total success are tiered on here. And this is kind of a mini reference table for a d3 instead of a d6. Which is interesting that they did the exact same thing for a D3 for a D6, but presented it in two completely different ways. Like that reference value table versus this just kind of like, kind of standard table. So easy as a difficulty tier of 2, and a reference value for the success is a 6. Average is difficulty 3, RV 9. Hard difficulty 4, RV 12. Impossible is difficulty 5, RV 15. And a success, whenever you succeed on a task, it is either a total success or a partial success. A total success is achieved whenever you roll equals or exceeds the reference value. A partial success has a variable range within its difficulty tier, as shown in the task resolution table. If a task is a partial success, it is successful, but it will have consequences determined by the judge. So standard partial success, PBTA plus PBTA. There's an example here, which is always nice. Delnira the Swift, great fucking name, attempts to climb a difficulty 3 wall. If Delnira's roll totals 6 to 8, she achieves a partial success, and if her total is 9 or higher, she achieves a total success. A roll of 5 or lower is a failure. And then on combat tasks, the effects of success and failures in combat are determined in the combat section. So read the combat section. So really, I mean, that's what it comes down to. The whole core mechanic is it's like PBTA but tiered. Is what it comes down to.
PBTA with like a roll master results table kind of thing.
There we go.
Yeah.
So So immediately, so this is we're getting into narrative advantages here. I am a big fan of narrative or situational advantage. I really like the concept, especially in rules like games and especially in 2d6 systems where like the numbers that you can add to 2d6 is so small in comparison, because the math, not perfectly but roughly, on advantage on a d20 is about +5 -5. So that's a 25% increase and decrease chance of success or failure on a d20. But if you add a +3 to a 2d6, if your success number is 10 or higher in like a PBTA, your chance of success increases by like, I think it's something to like 75%. So yeah. I think basically a +1 or -1 is about a 25% swing, which is roughly advantage and disadvantage on a d20.
Yeah.
So it's 1 versus 5 basically, which is again, bad math. I'm not great at it, but those are the rough estimates. Don't come at me, or do. That's fine. So narrative advantages. Players can and should be encouraged by the judge to creatively describe their actions. Depending on how creative the action is described, the judge may choose to lower the reference value by 1 or 2, thus increasing the chance of success. Simply look on the task resolution table and slide left 1 or 2 columns from the original containing the reference value. Note that the range of a partial success changes as well. Alternatively, if a task would normally fall into one difficulty tier, but circumstances make it more difficult, the judge can declare the RV up by 1 or 2. So, I like it. Thoughts?
Yeah, I really like the way that this works because it keeps the math on the referee side, which I think is always fun because then the players are just rolling their dice and hitting their targets. Like that's the goal. You don't have to worry about adding modifiers to your dice rolls or adjusting how many dice you're rolling or whatever. It's just you're always just rolling 2d6 and your skills modify what the judge is going to give you as their task difficulty, which I think is great. I like that. I have no other thoughts because I think it's a great way to run a game like this.
Yeah. You know what jumped out on this table to me, and this is a me thing. This is not a critique. This is a me thing. I cannot do so for example, on the end of page line 2, it says depending, but it's DE dash because that's the end of the line, and then it goes to pending on the next one. I can't do that.
It's because all of the text has been fully justified.
Yeah,
which is it automatically does that when you do full justification and have certain settings on. Yeah,
I can't. Ooh, it breaks my mind. I love visually looking at the page because the ends are like the whole reason for justified, but it drives me insane when something is split across 2 things. The interesting part is it really doesn't slow down the way your brain reads it, but for some reason all those little dashes on the side it just hits me in a spot that doesn't it's not the most enjoyable feeling. It's not bad. And again, this is not a critique. This is purely a me thing. But I'm just not a fan of justified. Regardless. So, and again, the same piece of art again, but a different section of the art. Again, super clever fucking way of using the same big, great piece of art and keeping sections thematic. Like, that's just so smart. I don't know why. It's such a little thing, but it's so smart. Cool. Yeah. So,
I'm going to steal that.
Oh yeah. For something light like this is a perfect way to do it. Especially if you can get like a nice big high res where you can use big chunks of the art.
Yeah.
Really smart. So Path of the Blade, and then there's a blade on the page, and it's a great page too because it's like it looks like there's almost a black kind of like curtainy background, and then you see the hilt of a very decorative, almost like rapier looking thing popping out. Really gorgeous. So this is the Path of the Blade. So as we said before, you can either do Path of the Pacts or Path of the Blades, hence the name of the game. But this is getting into the blade. So you followed a rigorous path to learn your martial skills. Blood drips from your weapon, and you know how to use it to eviscerate your enemies. Really nice little bit of little flavor bit to the. Oh, it's nice. It's nice. Again, real quick side note, when the Adderall's obviously hitting already, right? So when you have something that's so rules light like this, even just having 1 or 2 lines can really increase the vibes, and so it doesn't read like an SRD,
Yeah, for sure.
So when you gain a path advancement and choose the Path of the Blade, choose 1 weapon to apply the advancement's benefits to. For example, you could choose longsword, dagger, bow, etc. Each weapon will have a different advancement value depending on how many times you advance with it. I really like that a lot.
Yeah, that reminds me of old school MMO play, like in World of Warcraft, when you picked up that new weapon and you'd been working on your sword skill, and then you got a one-handed axe from the dungeon you just ran, and it's way better than the sword. You got to go down to like level 10 in Durotar or some bullshit and beat up a bunch of pigs so you can get better with the axe. I like that. I love that shit.
Yeah, it's really neat that they tie advancements on like specifically to that weapon, and then as you just said, like you really have to like eventually, if you really want to keep going, really focus on that weapon, or you could just jack of all trades it, and anything you fucking pick up, you're just like, you know, a bit of a master. It's really, I like that, and I like the way that the blade and the path, and as we get to path, we'll see a little bit more, are kind of like asymmetrical. Like it's not like you don't get the exact same things on both, and one's just magic, one's just blade. Like they do like two completely different things, and I really love when games do that, where you can like dig into the thing that you're good at in a way that like emphasizes that thing. So when recording your Path of the Blade advancements, you should notate each weapon separately. Upon your first advancement in the Path of the Blade, when attempting tasks related to your Path of the Blade weapon, you reduce the reference value of the task by 1. Every time you advance in this path with the same weapon, it is reduced again by -1 up to a maximum of 3 times for a total of -3.
I like this a lot too, because it leaves so much room for interesting uses of your weapons. Especially when it's, you know, when attempting a task related to the Path of the Blade weapon, like that obviously is combat. But also, if I'm trying to break down a door and I have a Warhammer, my Warhammer skill is relevant here. So like, at least I would make the argument that it might be. So I think that's a really cool, it's a really clever way to handle those kind of things.
Yeah, I like it. And I like the, you know, when you're doing a 2d6, as I said earlier, like you kind of like 3s are where you really max out on a 2d6, because realistically anything you want to do once you go past 3, like it's almost impossible to either like not do or to do, you know, like you get to a point where, I mean, if like in PBTA, for example, like if you have a +4, right, like and you know 2 1s is a failure, anything that's not a failure is at least a minimum success, because you got 2 + 4, you know, you're getting to a point where, you know, you're basically impossible to fail at things. So 3 is where it stops. So I really like that. Obviously mechanically Lucas knows what he's doing, and that you can get to a -3. Also, I don't think it's really like, it's not impossible to get to a -3 in a weapon and then get to start working on another weapon and then get to start working on another weapon. So like you really can become a master of a lot of weapons if you play this, you know, for even, you know, 4 or 5 sessions, you can have a weapon maxed out and just be a pro. Another piece of that same art, and again, like it's so smart. I love it. So the first one was kind of like just the edge of the hilt. The second page is like a half page, just like really focused in on the hilt, and then this third kind of like half page is the hand above the weapon, but you still see the sword in a little bit. And then on the very next page, there is this little piece of public domain art that's got a 2 crossed gauntlets over a sword that looks recently familiar. And
yo, when I was reading this today, I looked at that and I was like, fuck.
Hey, listen, there's great pieces of public domain art you see in a lot. There's like a lot of skull pieces that are in like 1,000 magazines. It's because they're great pieces. But it is interesting. I think this is the first time that they use like a graphic on a page that wasn't like a piece of art, but is just like a graphic instead. So, you know, interesting. And I'm curious why they didn't just use another piece of art for like the final piece, and they use this little different page. It just kind of makes it stand out a little bit, but that's, you know, that's also fine. So whenever you attain a total success while making rolls with Path of the Blade, you pull off a special feat. Roll 1d6 on the following chart and apply its effects immediately. So we're saying straight up, tiered success, partial success is like a yes, but obviously, but if you are using your Path of the Blade and you get a total success, which is not a critical, it's just a total success. It's just a success without a failure, which again is tiered to different things. You get to do a special extra ability, which I like. And I also like not having to necessarily like pick a bunch of different feats. I mean, I don't mind that either, but it's cool in a system this light that you can just roll a d6 and do one of these extra cool things, which is neat. So,
ultralight critical table. I like it.
Yeah. And I mean, and D6 obviously fits with the 2D6, so it's cool. So on a 1, you gain insight into your opponent's weaknesses, and you receive a -2 to the RV of your next roll against your target. which is, again, as we said, that's a solid chunk of points against somebody. Number 2, you perform your action with uncanny speed. You may immediately act one more time. Really great. Your opponent is weakened. If his next attack is successful, its damage is reduced by 1 step to a minimum of no damage. That's nice. 4, your opponent is stunned. They cannot make counterattacks in response to partial successes for 1 round. And 5, your strike was extremely effective. Increase the tier of wound dealt by 1 step. If it was already a severe wound, add an additional moderate wound to the damage dealt. And 6, you get to pick. I like that. I like that. Picking. Creating a crit lets you decide what you want to do. Pick your hit. And then we get to the Path of the Pact magic in all its glory. So you obtained a vision of the dark world of spirits, be they marvelous, sinister, or from another plane of existence, granting you ways to invoke them and ask for favors through a mysterious pact. When you gain a path advancement and choose a path of the pact, select 1 spirit you have a pact with to apply the advancement benefits to. For example, you can choose Salamander, Mortis the Decrepit, etc. Each spirit's pact will have a different value depending on how many times you advance with it. So in Path of the Blade, you get different weapons, and in Path of the Pact, you get different benefits for the spirits for which you have contacted. This feels like what Warlocks could have been, in the later editions of the world's most marketed role-play game.
World's greatest role-playing game. I want to add one to your thing by saying I love Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition.
Exclamation point F5E plus. We're at 23, and I keep telling myself I need to add 70 more for all the episodes that we did before. But fuck Watsy and the Pinkertons.
Yes, I know, right?
So, when recording your Path of the Pact Spirit Packs, you should notate each pack separately. Upon your first advancement in the Path of the Pact, when attempting tasks related to a spirit you have a pact with, you reduce the reference value of the task by 1. Every time you advance, you reduce it by 1 to a total of 3. So the core mechanic is the same, but the ways in which you can use this pact for the spirits is very different than you're going to use it with your blades, clearly, because one is a blade and one is a spirit. And it's really, the core difference between blades and spirits. So how magic works. So you were talking about you would go path because of the way magic works. So why don't you tell us, Kirby, my friend, how does magic work?
Each spirit you seal a pact with has a name and a mystical domain over which it has influence. When you invoke your pact to channel magic, the effect must relate to the spirit's domain. Each specific type of effect may only be invoked from the same spirit once per day. The judge has final say on whether an effect is too similar to another previously invoked effect. A spellcaster may only have one effect active at a time. For example, Votis the Ruthless invokes Salamander, a spirit of fire, asking for flames to shoot from his fingers. Salamander grants Votis's request with a successful roll, partial or total success. Once a specific effect has been granted to the spellcaster, the same effect can no longer be channeled during the same day. However, other effects related to the same spirit's domain are still possible, such as a wall of flames or spontaneous combustion for a spirit with influence over the fire domain. All magical invocations have a domain, an effect, and a duration. A domain is a descriptive term that identifies the sphere of influence of the spirit which the spellcaster has made a pact with. An effect is essentially a spell. Any magical effect invoked from the spirit must be associated with its domain. Effects are up to the judge to agree to, but can include many diverse phenomena. The duration is how long an effect lasts and is dependent upon the narrative. The judge has final say on how long an effect lasts. So yeah, I love that because essentially, like, magic is just completely up in the air. Like you can just oh no, my page popped the staple. Oh well. I have a book stapler. I'll fix it. essentially, I could just we can have decided that there were several spirits that are for some reason influencing our story, or I can just come up with one when I start make my character, and I like the Salamandor example. I just think it's a cool fucking word.
It is a cool fucking word.
Yeah, and it's also a great book. But yeah, I love that. I like that spells or effects are only useful once a day. I think that's pretty neat, to be honest. I feel like I would want to know why. That's the only thing I would want to know, like it doesn't really matter, but like as far as like the actual game goes, but I want to know, like in game world, why would that be the case? Is there a reason for that? But it doesn't really have any effect on me. But yeah, I love any kind of magic system that is extremely open-ended like this. There's just so many ways you can use a spirit that has dominion over fire.
Mm-hmm.
So many ways.
I love this magic system. A couple of things I really like about it. First, though, I'll say if you name something and then say it's essentially this other thing, it could also just be that other thing. Like if you say effects, and which is essentially a spell, you could just call it a spell. That also works too.
Yeah.
But I love completely open-ended magic, but I also like the restrictions that this puts on it specifically, because if we were talking about something like acid mages, literally you can travel the fucking universe with your magic. Like there is no bounds to it. And I feel like for this really rules light game with these like small advancements in this world, I feel like the only use. So basically you make a pact with the spirit, and then you can ask the spirit to grant you something, and then you can no longer, as you said, you can use it once a day, but you can do the same thing with a different spirit if you really wanted to. Like you could do a wall of fire with Salamandor, then you could do a wall of fire with Bob if you wanted to, but you can't do another one. Yeah, you can't do another one with Salamandor. Right. I really like that it's got this restriction on it, because I feel like it keeps players feeling small, which I really enjoy. I don't, one of the biggest knocks on another game out there is that the only end game at final level is to kill and become gods. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, and in this, you'd never become a god. All you can do is get you can just get a little tighter, with your spirit, and then go make friends with more spirits. I like that there's a restriction on it that's just this once a day, because it really tells you that like they'll grant you something, but like in small doses. Yeah. So I like a very open-ended system that does work these kind of like restrictions into it to keep you feeling like low level. Like I think low level old school D&D is like so much fun because of how like quasi horror it is, and how weak you are versus the world, and with the world not balanced to you. And I like this whole style of play here where you can never become a fucking god at the thing you're doing. You can just start to become better at other things. And I love the way that this rule system adds in basically the only way to really quote unquote advance is to really just expand your horizons and learn more things. I really enjoyed that. And I really like the way that basically I love open-ended magic that has a little bit of a curbing to your ability to become god, So I think a really clever way to do it. So, and then we have another page. This also has a graphic on top, so I like the consistency from page to page at the end of it. It's got like a spell book on the ground. So, example of spirit domains can include air, water, earth, fire, death, life, chaos, protection, teleportation, mind, etc. Judges and players are encouraged to work together to create their own. Dig it? Examples of invoked effects: damage, healing, enhancement, and curse. I really like those as like core examples. And so damage, 1d6 automatic damage. See the damage section? It's not hyperlinked to that section, is it? No, it's fine. Healing 1d6 wounds healed. See the wound section. Enhancement. Reduce the RV of all the target's tasks by 1d3, which that could be fucking big. And then curse. Increase the RV of all the target's tasks by 1d3. I like that they're kind of like. I could see this on like an
XY scale.
Yeah, so damage versus healing and enhancement versus curse.
Yeah,
you could really, fall on that. I really like the opposite of that. And then there are packed feats. When you attain a total success, same as before, roll a d6. So these are interesting things. This is an interesting page here. It's one of the only pages, I think, that has the writing on top of a piece of art. I could be wrong. It's the first one I think we've seen so far, versus writing on like a space. So, 1, the magic you cast grants you a deeper spiritual connection. You receive a -2 on your next roll. 2, you cast your spell Supernatural Speed. You may immediately act one more time. A lot of these mirror the Pact of the Bath. So actually, this feels like a little bit less asymmetric than I think I stated previously. A lot of it kind of like mirrors it in a way that like makes it different, but is still very similar. 3, your spiritual connection is spectacular. Your spell achieves maximum possible effect. 4, your patron is very flattered by your exploits. You can invoke the same effect once more the same day. Oh, thank you. So there is a possibility of double effects with your feats, which is cool. So your patron, I read that one already. 5, your spiritual connection is so deep that your body becomes ethereal. For the duration of your invocation's effect, you are immune to harmful effects unless they can also harm ethereal creatures. And 6, you get to choose. So those are good effects. Again, I think they really rounds out what you can do, and I like how well that works. So
yeah. The only thing that I wish was here, and I need to check Salamandor, the book, real quick and see. But we're not reviewing the book Salamandor, so it's irrelevant. But the only thing that I wish was here was I wish that there was risk with your pact. I think that it would be difficult to balance this, though balance can take a shit. But it would be difficult to balance this against with the simplicity of this system. It would be difficult to give the pacts some kind of slight edge over weapons, over blades, but having the possibility of having a defect or negative response from the spirit that you're trying to speak with. I don't know if it's necessarily even makes sense, but for me, whenever I'm thinking about magic, I'm always like, how can the gods fuck you up?
Yeah.
How can they be like, nah, not this time? Yeah.
I don't disagree. I think something like a if you had even something along the lines, because this is campaign play, really. It specifically says you can do campaign with this, right? If you had something along the lines of like, if you get too many like, 2s, snake eyes, you build up disfavor with your spirit, and maybe too many of those in the spirit will flee you or something like that. That would be cool.
Yeah, that would be. It sounds like you need to write some 3PP stuff for Pacts and Blades there, Ryan.
Pacts and Blades. This is great. Like, you could easily do so much good content with this. Yeah. I wonder what additional content's out there beyond Salamandor for this that people have done, because this is so just right for stuff. Really excited for it. Yeah. Combat is what we get to. I've noticed on the combat page, I wonder if it's in the book too, on page 24. No, it's not. So it's just on my PDF. All of the pages have like, the word combat, like the page is like half white, and then the header to it is white, clipped right to the edge. Oh yeah. So it kind of looks like the white feeds up
Yeah.
over the art, but for some reason on my PDF there's a tiny line that separates this one, so it's not quite connected. But it's not in the book, so that's not anything. So getting into combat and how combat works specifically. So combat actions such as attacks are just special tasks. So it doesn't work any differently. Combat is combat. So you roll 2d6 against an opponent's reference value to hit them. Just like any other task, each opponent has a reference value to be hit based on their difficulty. Player characters have a starting difficulty of 2, which is RV6. Wait a second. Player characters have 2, which is RV6. So we go to the table, right? So specifically, RV is your total success number.
Yes.
So when I look at the table, directly under 2, it'll take you up to partials. It's failures at 2 and 3, partial success at 4 and 5, and total success at a 6. That's where we're starting here. And their difficulty increases by +1 for every 4 combined path advancements they have. So if you have advancements, it's harder. Difficulty increases by +1 for every 4 combined paths they have. For example, a Path Sword 2, Pact Salamander Fire 3 character would have a difficulty of 3 RV9, while a Path Dagger 3, Sword 3, Hammer 3, Spear 1 character would have a difficulty of 4 RV12. This is breaking my brain for a second. So, for example, a Path Sword 2, Pact Salamander Fire 3 would have a difficulty of 3. And why is that again? So, difficulty increases by +1 for every 4 combined. So, that's a 5. So, that gives you a +1 because Fire 3, Sword 2.
The reason it's 4 is because each difficulty number has 4 columns. So, it keeps that at a base number. So difficulty 2, you start with an RV of 6. Difficulty 3, you start with an RV of 9. Difficulty 4, the character would start with an RV of 12. So the reason why it's every 4 is so that you don't end up with a weird like 2.3 or 2.2 where you have an RV of 7 for some reason, right? I think that was just his way of trying to simplify that.
Oh, wait, no. So they all have 3, right?
Is it 3 or 4?
And then the 4th one kicks over 2. That makes sense.
Oh, 3. Yeah, I'm sorry, not 3. Yeah,
and the 4th one kicks over. That totally makes sense. So every time you hit the next advancement, you jump up in the difficulty level. But so tell me if my brain is being dumb right now. So the better you get overall, the harder it becomes,
the harder you are to hit. So your character's difficulty is essentially your armor class. Yeah.
Okay, okay, that makes sense because my brain went, why are we making it harder to hit stuff? And it's not. That's not what this is. This is to be hit.
This could have been written a little bit more clearly as far as that goes, because the previous sentence is each opponent has a reference value to be hit based on their difficulty. Now, if you were to contextualize the next sentence, it makes sense, but it still could be, I think, maybe just a tiny bit more clear. But it doesn't not make sense.
I don't disagree with you. Yeah, my brain immediately went to this is how I hit stuff, not this is how I get hit.
Yeah.
But if you look at the very last sentence, as you just said, it says about being hit, like value to be hit. So yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. My brain was just dumb for a second. So that's cool. So the more you advance, the harder you are to hit. Makes perfect sense. Makes sense within the system. Makes sense within the values used within the rules. So possible attack results. So we're talking about total success, partial success, and failure. On a total, the attacker adds the effects of a feat to the damage or effect, which we've already gone over those tables. On a partial, you deal damage to the opponent, but you will suffer a counter attack from your target or any other consequence the judge feels is appropriate instead. If your opponent hits you with partial success, this will not also grant you a counter attack. So I like that. I like specifically the comma after the first sentence and then the extra bit, because one of the things I love most about 2d6, but one of the things that's hard with partial success, if you haven't played with it a ton, is the concept of a GM action not just being a monster reaction to the thing that you just did. So if someone punches you in the face with a partial success, right, or punches a monster in the face, your GM action doesn't have to be the monster punches them back in the face. It could be a completely different monster attacks a completely different thing, or, you know, a poison gas is spilled or whatever. Any other consequence the judge feels is appropriate instead. So this doesn't always necessarily mean monster hits back if you hit monster. And I really like that is specifically laid out even in just like a half sentence. So really important in this system to have that kind of freedom beyond just hit back, because at that point you might as well just do defense rolls and stuff. So and then failure, your attack does not hit and you receive an automatic damage from your opponent if you made a melee attack. If the attack has a magical effect, the judge decides what happens. So I like that. Damage chart. Damage is dealt in the form of light, moderate, and severe wounds. So the wound system is interesting. This is another really interesting part that my brain took a second to get, and I like it. It's really interesting. So damage is dealt in the form of light, moderate, and severe wounds. So levels of damage success. The highest value of the 2 dice rolled from a successful attack roll is used to determine the attack's damage as follows. I like that mechanic, obviously. That
I know you
when
do.
you roll when you roll 2d6. I've now seen it kind of pop up in, I think, maybe two or three games, but this is done in a completely different way. You're not taking the damage of the highest roll. You're taking the highest rolled number on your 2d6, comparing it, and then the damage is this kind of like abstracted, you know, light, moderate wound. So on if your highest die on attack is a 1 to 3, you deal a light wound. On a 4 to 5, you deal a moderate wound. On a 6, you deal a severe wound. So it's not direct amount of damage. There is no HP necessarily. It is the number of each of these types of wounds that you can have. So so for example, a nice example of play would have been nice right there specifically. But if you roll like let's say you have an RV of 7, right, and you hit that with a 4 and a 3, right? 4 is your highest die, right? So you would look at 4 to 5, which is a moderate wound, so you deal a moderate wound.
Yep.
I like it. I really like it. You know, I like with how abstracted this game is, with the way that like magic works and stuff like that. I like that you're not looking at a specific like HP number to just chip away at something.
You are kind of, which is interesting because I was thinking about this earlier before the stream started, actually, in how this is almost like, it's almost like literary math you're gonna do here, like because they are light wound, moderate, as we'll see in the next pages. Light wound, moderate wound, and severe wound are actually numbers that you have to track, but they are like narrative. And how they happen and when they happen, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, but I also like that it's not like you just have 10 and everything you do reduces it. I like that it splits it into multiple types. I think for a rules light system, I think that adds a variety, which feels in my mind like, well, then you're making it more complicated, but it isn't, which is nice because how light it is. So
yeah, I think that I'm not sure which system it is. I think it might be Cypher system, but I think that has something similar to this, and I know that whichever system it is inspired Jeff Baker from Happy Jack Games to do something very similar for their game. The Crypt Has Opened, which is coming out in this year sometime, but I've seen how it works, and he has a very similar wound table on like the character sheet, and you can essentially like get like a certain number of each type of wound before your character is dead, which is it's a really cool way to like kind of track that.
Yeah, I really like it. I think it's clever. I think it's good. It's a good use of it for that. I'm excited for the game. By the way, the cover art looks
He's
dope.
an amazing artist.
So good. So where were we? So if this is ever a situation where more than 1 degree of damage would be dealt, or a severe wound would be increased to the next greater step of damage, instead add 1 moderate wound to the base damage. I like that. It sounds like an edge case I got dealt with, and it's cool. And then automatic damage. Anytime a rule calls for automatic damage, simply roll a d6 and consult the table. I like it.
Easy.
Wounds. Characters and opponents have health points measured in wounds, which are divided among 3 tiers. At character creation, roll 1d6. This value determines your number of light, moderate, and severe wounds. You have light wounds equal to the roll's total. You have moderate wounds equal to half your roll, rounded up. And you have severe wounds equal to your roll divided by 3, rounded up. That's a very small number to divide those ways, right? So, like, for example, like if you roll a 1d6 and get a 2, you would have 2 light wounds, 1 moderate wound, and 1 severe wound.
I feel like it could have. I feel like he could have just not had most of that paragraph because it was. I feel like the paragraph actually complicates the table that's next to it, which explains the paragraph. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I was just thinking like you have severe wounds equal to your roll divided by 3 rounded up. It's like, well, you have a D2 number of severe wounds. Like that's what you have. Like that's, and the table shows you exactly what, it's roll a D6 for your like, I not knocking the at all. I just feel like this is another, in my opinion, another small example of just slight overcomplication of mechanics that don't really need the overcomplication.
I don't mind it. I like the concept of like 1 half and a third, because I like thirds, and 2d6 is another thing that really hits my brain about thirds. But I also, if I didn't have that paragraph and I just looked at the table, my dumb math brain would go, but why?
Fair enough. All right.
Why does a 6 get a 3 and a 2? And I don't know how long it would take me to go, oh, you know what? That's half and that's a third. I don't mind. I like it. I see what you're saying. I don't mind it personally, but I absolutely see what you're saying. Because again, for those in podcast land, what we see next is a table that explains all that. So you have 4 columns and 6 rows. No, 4 rows and 6 columns, whatever. So it's a d6 roll, and then the number of light wounds, number of moderate wounds, and I'm trying to remember in Excel at work, like which one is rows and which one's columns.
Up and down.
Yes, but when you have to highlight them, you go this way, and that's what's breaking my brain. But yeah, so d6 roll, light wounds, moderate. So for at 1, if you roll a 1, you get a 1 1 1 1 1, because that's how math works. If you roll a 3, you have 3 2 1, right? And if you go 6, and there's stuff in between, I'm just not saying all of them. If you roll 6, you get 6 light wounds, 3 moderate wounds, and 2 severe wounds. What's crazy is how small a d6 roll is, and how vastly, insanely different your 2 characters would be if someone rolled a 1 and someone rolled a 6. Because you are fucked if you rolled a 1.
Yeah. Very much so. Yeah.
And then there's teeth graphics on this page, which I enjoy. Teeth graphics on the last page, which I enjoy. And then this monster art that they're using is very teethy.
I have these teeth on a patch on my battle jacket.
Nice. I need to get a battle jacket. I got so many goddamn patches. And then there is a second page of white text on a piece of art, which is fine. Whenever you run out of wounds of a particular type, any additional damage you take of that kind is instead treated as damage to the next available wound tier. So if you run out of light wounds, if you take a light wound, you have a moderate wound. I like how clean and simple that is. It makes absolute sense that you've taken so much of a lighter damage that taking more of it makes sense that it would then become moderate, because you're already hurt so much that the next hurt hurts more. Like, that's so clever
Yeah.
I love it. I really love that. So, for example, if you are out of light wounds and would suffer another, I just said that's exactly what I just said. So, good example, because that's where my mind went. And then there's that exact example, basically how you increase to. But it says if you ever run out of severe wounds, you die. So that's your death state, right? Is when all your severe wounds are gone, you done dead. So if you have 2 severe wounds and you get 2 severe wounds, you're dead. But you could also get 6 light wounds and then your 3 moderate wounds and then your 2 severe wounds and be dead. So how do you recover dim wounds? And then we're almost done. So recovering wounds recover every time your character is able to rest. The judge will determine what constitutes rest. I love that. Every time you can put in your game, GM discretion, judge decides, like, to a point. I really enjoy that because it's like, I am not going to have a whole table of what rest means figured out. After each rest, roll 1d6. You recover a number of wounds from each tier as if you had generated wounds for a new character with your roll. You may never recover more wounds than your normal maximum. I love that.
It's great healing.
Yeah.
Super easy, extremely simple. Like,
hey, remember how you made wounds? Just do that.
Just do that again. And if you fill it up, then you can't go over. Easy, done.
Yeah. Done. There's an example here. We just did the math. We don't need that. Increasing maximum wounds. After you gain any 2 path advancements, roll 1d6 plus 2. If the result is greater than your character's current light wounds, this becomes your new light wound value. Every 2 additional path advancements you gain, roll 1d6, adding plus 2 for every 2 path advancements you have. That broke my brain. For example, if you have 4 path advancements, roll 1d6 plus 4. And if you have 6 path advancements, roll 1d6 plus 6, and so on. Use this new value to calculate your maximum light, moderate, and severe wounds. When resting, you never add these bonuses to healing. So wait a second. After you gain any 2 path advancements, roll 1d6 plus 2.
You can now roll 1d6 plus parentheses every 2 path advancements.
Gotcha. If the result is greater than your character's current light wounds, it becomes your new light wound value. Every 2 additional grants you gain, roll 1d6, adding plus 2. Yes. Okay. So basically, you roll 1d6 to heal, and wait a minute. Actually, you can do that. No. So every time you get your second path advancement, you can re-roll the number of wounds you have, and if it's better, you get better. So if you roll a 6 on the start, you never get better because that's literally the maximum. So. Gotcha. So you're shooting for a 6 each time. So armor. Armor adds to the number of wounds in each character's wound tier. These wounds are consumed first. If you run out of wounds granted by the armor, it is rendered useless. So this automatically makes me think armor points.
Yeah.
Right?
Armor wounds.
Yeah. So wounds. So armor is not soak. It is a set number of points that you can exhaust, and the way it works is basically armor just adds to the wounds that you can take by type, and they get used up first. So it's like temporary wounds until they're gone.
HP,
yeah, temp HP basically. So plate armor adds plus 2 light, medium, and severe wounds. So 2 across the board for everything. Solid. Chain armor is plus 2 light and medium and plus 1 severe. Leather armor is plus 1 light, medium, and severe. And then a shield is plus 1 to light, medium, and severe, and shields stack with other armor type. My only question with that, my only concern with that, I will say knock for this. Also, real quick, love the next full page where it's just a really close-up view of like armor, like right at like the elbow, shoulder, chest.
I think that's the same piece. That's the sword in the other pictures.
Oh, I'm
pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah.
So my only problem with this entirely is, and I know it's a light system, but there is no, unless I'm not scrolling far enough ahead, why wouldn't everyone just wear plate armor? Because there's mechanical.
I was thinking the same exact thing. There's no mechanical reason not to. That was my. I feel like armor in this system, at least, or in this book, armor is the only thing that feels like tacked on.
It does.
With a game that's so tightly designed and like really, really well crafted to like work together with itself. Armor feels like, oh shit, there's armor in these games. How do I make that a thing too? And it would work fine. What I would have done is just say plate armor adds +1 to or +2 to your RV of any task related to. I would just say any task, honestly, unless it's like that's where we would start to get a little bit more difficult. Like you'd have to clarify like plate armor would add +1 to or +2 to any RV that is combat related. I would just say combat or movement related. Chain would be +1 to the same. Leather armor, you would maybe get -1 to combat RV, and then shield is just a +1 to combat. Like I feel like that would honestly have solved that problem. If I mean, maybe not those exact things, but something like that.
Yeah, I'm torn on this because I like the idea of this increase of wound. The other thing that this immediately starts to build then is a couple of things. One is armor becomes a resource you are always hunting for. Right, so you created a game now of armor hunting because as soon as my assumption, yeah, if you run out of wounds granted by your armor, it is rendered useless. So if you're wearing plate armor, it will soak 2 light wounds, a medium wound, and severe wound, and then be trash. So narratively, you got broken ass armor, you need to ditch it, and now you're hunting for more armor because your armor is now gone. Versus like a soak system, right? So I like the idea, but I feel like I feel like this is the weakest part in the game because I feel like you could also, as you just said, increase your RV by 1, increase your RV, by, because it doesn't even need to be a whole difficulty. That's the other thing with the table that kind of hits me, right? So at right under the 2, right, your mixed success value is at a 5, but the next one over, your mixed success value is a 6. The next one over, so your RV goes 6, 7, 8, right? And then you hit 3, so then it becomes a 9, right? And 4 becomes a 10. So every time you go up a difficulty, your RV increases by a total of 3. So 2 is a 6, 3 is a 9, right? Like, you could have just had these things increase, just bump over a couple. I think that's basically what you were saying, right? Just like plate armor makes your RV better.
Plate would just make your RV more difficult when you're trying to accomplish tasks, and it gives you +2 to all your wounds.
Right.
Like,
the other thing though is instead you could always have, instead of like, you could cut this wound section out entirely and just have your RV to hit move over, right? So like if your difficulty, right, is at a flat 2, right, where your RV is a 6, you could have, leather be a 7, I would honestly probably break this down to just like light and heavy, right? Light adds, 1 to your RV, so you go from a 6 to a 7. Heavy adds 2 to your RV, and I would have light armor not have any difficulty, like any thing that gets rid of it. But on heavy, I would have it be like maybe like a -1 RV to anything that requires like speed, dexterity, acrobatics, or anything like that up to your judge. You know what I mean? You're literally rocking plate armor. You're not doing backflips. Yeah,
and I like the way that it works with the wounds because I personally like that. I mean, as you know, and very few other people know right now, I'm a big fan of armor breaking and you having to find it. So I think that the way that it works is actually really cool. I just feel like there needed to be like just a negative or a bonus to various things, that was it. That's kind of it.
That's the thing too, is like, it's this implied. So mechanics will always inform the way that you play. There's subconsciously or consciously, the way that they're written and then the way that they're applied, right? So like, since there is no real like equipment, like there's no burden system, there's no nothing, right? So like, it really comes down to the judge's discretion for how much you can carry, right? But and even how you can acquire the plate armor. Someone could make it really difficult to do that. I wouldn't mind a little bit, just a smidge, a sentence or two even on like how or why. But the fact that there really seems to be no specific penalty to the difference from a shield all the way to plate armor, but the difference in what you get for it is crazy big, like is really feels like there's something missing. But again, as soon as you do start, like to me, I don't know if this I don't know why, maybe I'm wrong, maybe this feels different to you. This does not feel like a dungeon delving game to me. This feels like more of like an open world exploration with some combat game. So then having a armor system that becomes armor hunting, like, feels a little bit more like this really breaks, or this really makes combat feel like kind of the most important part, because you're going to constantly be looking for armor so you can fight. So I just the extrapolation of where this goes can really like inform the way that the game is played, and I just don't necessarily want my players to just be constantly armor hunting as their stuff breaks in this specific game. In a dungeon delve game, I'd be like, fuck yeah, break that shit all the time, be hunting for that, like find armor, rip it off a body, you know, stuff like that. But I think the biggest knock on this, and we both, I think you're in agreement, is that there is no penalty for wearing plate armor.
Yeah. And like I think I can see, perhaps I can see his intention, if and I'm going to be generous because I don't know what his intention was. I don't want to say that this was just tacked on at the end. I think when I said that earlier, I should have clarified that that's how it feels to me. I don't think that I doubt that Lucas was like, oh shit, I forgot armor, let me just throw that in there at the end, right? I think that thinking about it like an expendable resource, and even just something that you don't always have, like you don't always have armor, is a fair way to look at it if you don't have the negative effect of having plate armor. Like, you know, oh shit, we're hunting this griffin across this mountain range and we stumble across a dead guy who was also doing that like 6 months ago, and he's wearing some plate armor. Which one of us is gonna wear this, right? Like, you know, I feel like that's a valid way to look at it, from a like a more I guess optimistic and objective perspective. I'm still like, I wish that there were negatives to it, but I feel like maybe that could be where he was coming from, you know, because it's such a limited and expendable resource that, you know.
But I wouldn't even minded then if it said that, you know, default is leather and anything beyond that is like difficult to find or something. But I feel like then that's creating world building. So like, but what do you want to do then? Like, but there's also been some world building in here with Salamander and like the way you do packs and stuff, a little bit of flavor tech. So I don't feel like this is tacked on, you know, like you just said, to clarify that a little bit. I just feel like this might be the least developed part, and I wouldn't have minded just a little, just a smidge more here. Anyway, so that's armor. And then we have examples of opponents. So light wounds of enemies will always be 3 times their difficulty. Use the formula for determining player character starting health to determine enemy wounds. Judge can have special abilities and are encouraged to interpret these however they see it. So basically, bad guys work the same way good guys work, which I like that. I like not having to create like an entirely separate system for monsters, or having some like goddamn fucking like hidden super secret algebraic formula for how fucking like CRs work. Fucking 5e. But I like it, and again, the light wounds of an enemies will always be 3 times their difficulty. So, por ejemplo, a goblin is a difficulty 1. So their light wounds are 3. So then you would reference the D6 chart, I guess, from before. Is there ever a time where light wounds are the same? Because then, no, they're always going to be different because it's the same number that you rolled. So you would just look at the reference chart for light wounds, and you would see 3 light, 2 moderate, 1 severe. I like that. I think that's so fucking clean. Like difficulty 2, so light wounds 6, you know, which means 6 light means 3 moderate, 2 severe. And a oh shit. So yeah, so your bad guys will far exceed how good your good guys can get very quickly. Because so for example, like the orc uses a blade, which is a scimitar, which is -1 RV, right? But if you what's the highest difficulty thing that's listed here? Is it that 4?
The dragon,
yeah. So Cyclops is 3, but dragon is 4, which means that their light wounds would be 12, which then also makes that explainer for 3 and 2. Because if you get to like 20 light wounds, you have to divide it by half, which should be 10, and a third would be math. And
7-ish, 6.5.
Yeah. So like, yeah, so like 7. So 7. And then, so explaining the hardest thing on here, dragon, difficulty 4. It's got flight. It's large. It's got a blade, when claws are -4 RV, fire breath -4 RV, all damage +1 step, wounds 12, wounds, light wounds 12, moderate wounds 6, severe 4. The only thing I think on here that kind of gives me pause is, I would not have minded a whole nother paragraph explaining a little bit more of how to use those special abilities in a, again, balances in the most important way, but in like a way that doesn't break the game. So like when you go from goblin difficulty 1, that's all you got, and suddenly dragon has flight, which, okay, get it, large, okay, get it, but blade marked as claws -4 RV, and then fire breath -4, all damage up 1 step. There's no frame of reference for the amount of RV you increase and decrease, kind of, for the specific abilities for that guy. So I feel like you're really, really crafting and really needing to know the system and the players to craft a big baddie. Like, I would have to run this game a bunch to feel comfortable making a dragon or a dragoness character.
I feel like it's, for the most part, it feels like it's just the difficulty as far as what the -RV would be, except there are obviously not, there are a few exceptions to that rule here, but that's what I'm looking like. The dragon is a difficulty 4 and it's got -4 RV. Cyclops is difficulty 3, it's got -3 RV, but then giant spider is difficulty 3, -2 RV. That's kind of how, that's probably what my rule of thumb would have been if I was gonna, you know, run this off the
that makes
cuff
sense.
or whatever.
Like a rough, because orc shaman right above it, difficulty 2, but its spell is a -2 RV. That's not a bad, like, and then, well, the orc is difficulty 2, scimitar -1 RV. So it feels like roughly the difficulty, and then you could tweak it up or down by 1. That's not bad. That's not a bad thing. But I wouldn't mind that sentence in here where you say like your special abilities are roughly your difficulty, you know, +or-1 RV. That might have been like a nice little thing to add just to give a little bit of context for character building. But, you know, again,
and the only other thing I have here is, what the hell is, oh, okay, never mind, all damage +1 step. I got it. Okay, when I read that the first 7 times, I had no idea what the fuck +1 step meant. I thought, like, does that mean it moves faster? Like,
my assumption, and tell me if this is the same thing you think before you tell me what it is. Wait. So if you, when you roll your wound, if you roll a 2 for light, you actually get a moderate wound.
Yes, I think that's what it means. Yeah.
That's what you thought, right? Yeah. So roll your damage, but then increase up by 1. So if you're moderate, it's always severe. And if it's severe, that sucks for you. I mean,
it's either that or it's oh, no. You know what I think it actually is? I think it's on the table, on the reference value table, all of the damage that players are dealing against the dragon are +1 difficulty up the table. That's maybe,
Because I feel like
I
I feel like he used the word step in reference to that before, in reference to the
But-
table.
But the other thing with damage is it's related to wounds. I think if it was wound step, it would totally make sense. But damage,
Maybe it is wounds then.
but damage always just rolls a d6, right? Is there ever a time when you don't just roll d6 for damage because you pick the wound type,
I don't think so.
right?
I
So
think you
then-
might. I think you might be wrong.
So then I
Right
think
here.
it might even be better for all wound one step, or if you roll a 3, it's a 4.
Yeah,
know.
that's probably
Lucas.
what I would do. I don't know.
So Lucas, if you are listening, tell us what +1 step means. Like I wouldn't
It
have
is
minded
just an
even,
example, but yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't have minded even just one. Well, I mean, you got to have a little bit of a bestiary, right? I wouldn't have minded
for sure.
if they specifically, because I think the next page, I mean, it might be an in page, but like it's empty. Oh no, this is a beautiful page in the book. I would not have minded so examples of play are great, especially in rules light systems that you need to kind of like extrapolate a little bit. I wouldn't have minded a page of just like, here's a dragon. This is why the difficulty is this. This is why the damage is. This is why the fire breath is this, and this is all damage +1 step. Like pick a big baddie, break down why you did it just once as an example of building one. I think that would have been really, really helpful here. But we can also probably look in like Salamander or something and see other like baddie stat blocks. But I feel like that's a lot of extrapolation of like, let me research on how it works to try to feel how it is, versus just like a couple of lines that might have explained it. So that might have been helpful to have, but there it is. But I love this very last page here. So if you actually look at it in the spreads in the book, it's this big old page of this like very scenic thing, again, like really giving you the flavor. And then in the bottom right here, it just says, welcome to the world of Pacts and Blades. And I like that because the first time I looked at it, I was like, this could be on the front, but I love that basically they just gave you all the rules and then just opened up a door for you and said, welcome, now go. Like I love that's the implication to me, is just go. But this as just a graphic thing is such a gorgeous, it might be it's my favorite spread in the game. I don't know if there's another one, but like this is just beautiful to me with just that little thing in the bottom right that really pops off this like dark art page. It's great.
Yeah.
And then we get to those beautiful dark blood orange in papers here. There's a list of all of the art pages here. Are all the people from which the public art domain was done, and then graphic design by Gontijo. Back page, which is again the spread for the cover art, and that's a game. That's a game. I love that we can do 2 hours to do a 30-page game. But I really love digging into these like rules like games, because we can really sit and dig and talk and go back and forth. Like it's I really love these. So we're going to hop over to our scores for this game right now. Boom. And for those that don't know, generally when we review a game, we use a 5 metric system. It's art and style, layout, rule set, originality, and value. But we have decided, and we still need to schedule that too. We have decided for zines, because there were a lot of zines we did like over the course of last year where we didn't give the zine a rating, because the zine just wasn't big enough realistically to meet all of those metrics or meet the minimum requirements we felt for the metric. So we felt it would have been a disservice, like, because there are some really great games out there that are only like 5 pages long, so there's not room for as much art as something like a fucking Cyborg, right? So like giving that a score we felt would have been just mean, like a disservice, and it didn't, so for a long time we were talking about potentially doing a set of zine scores, and Hunter and I finally sat down and actually did that. So this will be the second game we review that uses the zine metrics for it instead. So instead of 5, we use 3 metrics, and it's basically a lot of those 5 metrics simplified and then a little bit different. So the first is visuals. So that is, in the previous metric, that would be art and style and layout all together. It's just, when you look at the book, it's what you see from the book. So on zines like this that are small enough to be counted as zines, we don't give as much of a knock for things like not having hyperlinks and stuff like that. That's still in there, as part of like layout things a bit. But when the thing is only like 20 pages long, you don't need hyperlinks to reference the book really as much. So it's not as important. It's still nice if you do it. Listen, do it anyway, please. Or even like bookmarks or something. But again, when it's only 32 pages long and it takes you 3 flips to get back to page like 14, it's not as important. So visually, we're talking art, style, layout, how you feel when you look at the book. Rule set, core mechanic for a zine, the core for a zine, because really the rules make up the bulk of it, since you don't have a lot of other stuff. But then there's also one for vibes. So vibes is kind of a mix of originality into a bunch of other stuff. So vibes is when you look it through the book and the zine itself, the way it's written, the way the art is, the way everything is, really comes down to like how much does the whole physical thing in your hand and reading it make you want to play the game, and how much does all of that also feed into the game itself. So if this is more cocky and fantasy, how much does this make you feel like you're playing in the world of Michael Moorcock? Like what are the vibes you get from the game? You got good vibes, you got bad vibes, but it's also a mix of just like, if you go through the rule set, you can do knocks on the rule set, but does some rule set give you bad vibes? So it's a very, very abstracted thing. So you just feel it out, So visuals on Packs and Blades. It's all...
are we still on 10s? Out of 10s?
Yes. So max can be 30 here. Yeah, so visuals... So it is all public domain art, which, I mean, I do like, but art, that's commissioned and stuff like that. But I understand that that's expensive. But, there is... again, when we do out of 10 for each of these, 5 it just means bang average. 5 just means if you pick up an average zine, how much art it has and how it looks and how it's stuff like that. 5 is average, not bad. It's literally just average. So something to get up to like 8, 9, and 10, it needs to be really fucking good compared to every zine you've ever looked at. What are your just initial thoughts? Not necessarily a score. Your thoughts on visuals?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's extremely good, but I do like the layout. It's clean. It's easy to look at. The artwork is beautiful. It's all public domain art, but it's still like it's well selected to fit. And as we discovered together, each like section kind of has its own like art piece that is kind of moved around. I do think that there's a couple of spots like on page 8 and then page 10. It's like it's literally in the exact same position. Like it could have been possibly, maybe increase the size of that picture and like use different parts of it there. And even on page page 13, for instance, is a great example of the difference between page 10 and 13 is great. I like that. But page 8 and 10 are like, it's the exact same. But overall, I think it's pretty good. I like it a lot. It's clean. It's easy to read. It's extremely easy to read. It looks really nice.
I think visually, if we bring it down to really like art and style and layout like we had on the other one, I think the layout is super strong. I mean, Guntio is fucking... I hope I'm saying that right. I hope that the J is H-ish in that, and if I'm saying that completely wrong...
I think it is, yeah.
I very much apologize for that. But they're just a fucking great layout person. Like whenever I see their name on a zine, like it's going to be really fucking nice. So I really enjoy the way it's laid out. But I do think, I do have to knock. I love the end pages. But I do feel like I have to knock any zine that uses. So okay, so let's come from this from a different thing. So we don't go 10 down, we go 5 up or 5 down. So we start at a 5 and that's average. And if something exceeds the average by some way, we go up. Right. And this and this is explained to the audience, not just to you, Kirby. This is just in general. So this is how my brain tries to work it, is 5 up, not 10 down. So we're not taking away from something that's perfect. We're starting on average and moving up or down. So for me, I really love it. I think the cover is still like the cover on that last page is like my favorite. But it is public domain. I think it's clever the way that they use the pieces that they used, but I think that, as you said, like if you flip the page from one to the next, it's the same exact spot, just part of it's chopped out. Even just that page, because when they do use the blade one, they do use different pieces of it. So I think the layout's really solid, so I think that jumps it up to a 6 for me, but I think the art is pretty average for like a 30-page zine that uses public domain art. I don't think there's anything crazy that sticks out, and I don't think anything crazy like really could, you know what I mean? Like it's public domain art, that's totally fine, uses some graphics, but I think the layout really adds like a point for me. Does anything else for you?
No, I was kind of between a 6 and a 7, to be honest. And I'd go with a 6. Because, that noticing that art piece was like duplicated, and a couple other things were just kind of like, at least in my copy specifically, there's a couple little errors, but I think that they were all corrected. So, but I'm gonna go off the one I have, so I'll say I'll give it a 6 for that.
Yeah, I think I agree. Yeah. I think a 6 feels good for this. Again, I mean, it's not an art zine. It's not. Yeah. That's not where the emphasis is. I think it's definitely enough art, and I think it's well selected art to give you the feel of the game and to evoke some stuff. But I think that's about what you need for that. So now rule set. So we're never gonna give a 10. 5 is average rule set. 5 is something where you're like, this is interesting, I'd play this. And 10 is, oh my god, this changed my entire life. This has become my identity now. A couple people out there that only do DCC do that, or the entire 5e community play a new game. But rule set overall, objectively, again, starting at a 5 and going up. What are your just thoughts?
Not
or
too
what really
crunchy.
Stands out? Yeah, what really stands out? Plus and minus.
I like the way that the resolution system works a lot. I think that it's a tad, like I had said a few times, it's a tad overcomplicated. Not even in the actual rules themselves, just in the presentation of the rules. I feel like there's a little bit of overcomplication as far as that goes. I don't know if that's, since we've kind of condensed the categories, I don't know if that's necessarily about the rules, but it's the presentation of the rules. So
what's interesting is the RV chart is the only chart done like that, and every other chart in the book is laid out like columns and rows.
And then the armor stuff was kind of like for me, it was I could see it. I can see it without it. Like I could see it with some changes. That's kind of where I'm at. But I like it. I like it.
Oh, that's the thing, is like I really, really like it. I think this is what's interesting is I really love, so 2d6 is my favorite. I don't know if anyone knows that. I don't know if you've listened to the podcast at all or heard me literally say it earlier. But this is a really fun, interesting, kind of more unique way than what I've seen different 2d6 systems use. Because like I said, a lot of times it's pure mixed success, in the PBTA style, or it's pick a difficulty and get up or down to it, right? You pick like a 9 or something like that and go up or down to it. And then there's a million others, but that's a lot of where things lump in. I do like how there is and the more I read and the more I think and stuff like that, I do like how there is an interesting tiered mixed success to it. But again, I do feel that like, because of the way RV has to work for things like wounds and various things, I feel like a lot of those lower numbers, like I genuinely feel like a lot like where 2 starts and the one before 2 and stuff like that feel like, I guess you have to have it on the table, but it feels like there's almost an unnecessariness to it, like having like 1 level of partial success and stuff like that. Like I said, I love the way it works. I'm curious how, if you readapted this entire game to a 2d10 system, so there's just a little bit more range, I feel like I'm curious how that would change gameplay, and I'm curious how that would change the tiered success into a wider range of those things, because you could really I mean, 2d6 really wraps everything into threes. You could do 2d10 and still kind of have a lot of threes, because then you get to like a 3, 6, 9, you know, damn good time. But you could drop off basically the whole low section and just break it into 3, 6, 9, with 10 just being like crit, you know, pure critical successes and everything, which would make another interesting aspect to the game of just like the highest level of triumph or something like that. Again, that's just a curiosity. I enjoy the system. I think, like you said, armor is a bit of a meh for me. I think that was the weakest part. I think that the way that the packs work, obviously it's called Pacts and Blades, I think it's really clever. I think magic would really fucking shine in this. And I do still really like the way that, where is the page where it talks specifically about, so path of the, for example, a path sword to Pact 3. So one thing that maybe I missed over it is, in my mind, I immediately went to, if I'm Pact of the Blade, I'm all blades, and if I'm Pact of the Path, I'm all path. But clearly that's not the case. Clearly you can mix and match your characters, which I really like, but I don't know if that was spelled out, and maybe
I don't think it was clarified. I think it made it appear as though. Let me look at this real quick, because I want to look at the introduction here. It made it feel like. No. Okay, on page 5, it does say you may advance in either path, both during character creation as well as throughout the campaign. Yeah. Okay. I feel like that was just kind of glossed over.
We glossed over that
on my several read-throughs of this. So.
Yeah. But I love that, because you create a system, you create a world where everyone can be sword mages, you know, and I like that. That's fun. That's cool. Long story short, I'm jammering because the coffee's hit me super hard. I really enjoy the rule set. I really want to play. I think it's really fucking clever. I think there are a couple of knocks that I have on it. I would really want to develop armor in a more interesting way. I do think the concept of this being like a framework that you can put into other things does lessen some of those things before, because it's really just like, here's some stuff, you can use it, add it into your things. This isn't a complete game. It's not meant to be a complete game. But where are you at in scores for
I was leaning towards a 6. I think it's good. Like I said, I like it. It's not my favorite system, but I do really like the system a lot. I mean, maybe I'm like a 6.5. That's probably where I was really feeling like a 7 for this. So if you're at a 6.5, we could easily give this a 7. Yeah, we could do 7. Yeah, 7.
Because I really do like, and I definitely want to give props to the unique mechanic that I haven't seen before, and it might exist out there, but I haven't read before, like a 2d6 tiered partial success instead of just the standard PBTA numbers, and how everything's extrapolated off of that. I do definitely want to recognize that is a really interesting, new to me core mechanic. So I think a 7 feels really good for this. And then vibes. What are your general vibes? Again, this is really abstracted across everything. It really comes down to like, how much does reading this and looking at it make you want to play the game? You know.
Honestly, it does make me want to play it a lot, especially after talking through it more with you, and not just reading it on my own. I also really like, as we were discussing the armor stuff, I started to think about the actual application of this game in a campaign, and thinking of it more like a Monster Hunter style game, which is kind of really what the introduction says it should be, right? You're about slaughtering bizarre monsters from the depths, right? Like, I think this could be a really fun game to run, like just a campaign style hunting, like The Witcher or some shit like that. Like you get a job to go out in this fucking mountain range and hunt a griffin, like I was making as an example before, or go find this like ogre in a cave somewhere that's terrorizing a local farm. Like that's your quest for the day. Like that's your game session. I think this is kind of a really good thing for that. I don't know how well like the the weird pacts with gods could, like, as far as like lore wise or story wise, narratively, might like blend in with the actual like application of those rules in that specific way of play. But
I think
I
that's
do
great.
think that this is kind of a great game for that kind of game style.
Extrapolating on what you say a little bit there, like if you're out in the forest hunting weird creatures, there's going to be spirits all over.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like you could find a forest spirit and your domain could be, you know, I wouldn't say nature because that's very broad, but even if it's just plants and then you're growing thorny stuff around the griffin and stuff like that. Yeah. I actually, you like just completely changed a lot of my perspective on this just by what you just said. Like, I mean, it's more cock, not The Witcher, but like I think using that, and even the way that The Witcher works, where you're really swinging your sword a bunch, but then you get little bits of like your fucking little things,
little magic stuff. Yeah,
but you can. I really like that whole concept. Yeah, Studio Ghibli RPG. Yeah, I could see a Princess Mononoke style, you know, thing in here too a lot. And plus it's like Michael Moorcock too, so like you gotta, you know, there's all, just calling it Moorcockian fantasy gives you an entire world to play in, an entire set of books and stuff to play in the world too. But again, so the thing too that's really interesting about this versus other games is, right, this is a zine game versus like a book game, and that's very specific to like if Lucas sat down with this and added 20 more pages and made it, you know, like a 50-60 page game, put a little bit of world building in, extrapolated a little bit on the rules and stuff like that, like that would be an entirely different experience. And I also would love to see that stuff, but it's unnecessary. Like, this is the epitome of what I think like a zine game that you can buy, go, I love this parts, I'm not as big a fan of that parts, I'm definitely going to use parts of this in my campaign. Like, I think this is perfect for that entire style, entire vibe, to literally go, this is a zine, this is a framework, there's a little bit of world things that it gives you a tiny bit, like just a little bit of a nudge in a direction, and then you run with it. I think that's perfect for what this is, and I really think that that was the intention with Lucas. So for that, keeping that in mind for what this is, and not, you know, going, well, it's not this. Again, the vibes are high on this. The fact that 90% of it does read like an SRD, the art, the layout, and then the little bits of flavor that tossed in definitely elevated for me. Yeah, the vibes are good for this. I want to play this game, like, and the cover, as you said, makes me go boom. Yeah, and it also made me immediately want to go, ooh, I want Salamandor. You know, I bought that stuff. It's in the freaking mail. I should have bought it forever ago. That's a knock for me. So what are your thoughts on vibes?
I'd give this a solid. I'd honestly be pushing an 8. Honestly, 8? As far as like my desire to actually play this based on what I have said today.
Yeah,
you know,
8 was exactly where I was in my head too. Like, I think the vibes are great for this. You know, I think this is like, I think this score here is really solid for how I feel like a lot of these like rules light kind of more frameworky zines are. You know, like it uses public domain art, so like that's not, you know, it's supposed to evoke, but it's not going to be the strongest point. It's not it's not going to be it's not an art zine. The rule set is really solid. A 7 is a really solid score for a really ultralight rule set, and then vibes are high to play it. Like, I feel like this is exactly kind of what I expected from this, and how it felt. So when I actually look at the math for this, because I can't just go 777 because that's how it would actually work. 6 plus 7 plus 8 is exactly a 21. I think 21 out of 30 is a really solid score for exactly, and it pretty much exactly where I expected this to fall in.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Any thoughts on that? Feels good? Feels right?
Yeah. No, 21's good. I like it. I feel the same. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is Pacts and Blades from Lucas Rollum, the minimalist OSR inspired sword and witchcraft RPG for short campaigns and quick sessions. I think, you know what I think is the most important thing is, I think that Lucas accomplished what he wanted to do with this. It feels
exactly.
It feels really good. I think the only thing that's going to stick with me as a potential just like knock from this is I want to develop armor a little bit more. Everything else, like, I'm going to run exactly as is, but I think if I was going to run this, I would do it the way the armor works, but then I would want to feel how it could be developed slightly. And I feel like the best way would be slight RV tweaks in the way that you're hit, or in the difficulty of the ways that you accomplish things. But I feel like that's the only thing I take away from this without, that. But otherwise, I want to play it. We're going to play it. It's on the fucking list.
Yeah, for sure.
So, that's it. That's our episode for today. Really like it. Like this game. If you liked what you heard from all of this, thank you. We appreciate your feelings on that. But also check out more of Lucas Realm's stuff. I really debated doing this versus Mini BX, because Mini BX is a much more developed game from Lucas. I think it's their current kind of magnum opus for what they want from a game. It's really fun. It's really interesting. You definitely should go check out all of their other stuff. But we should probably do a link. I'm positive that they have an itch page, and it's probably lucasrealm.itch or something like that.
I was just on there earlier. I'm pretty sure
check out their stuff. Yeah, it's literally lucasrealm.itch, lucasrolim.itch. You can check out all of their stuff. They have a lot of fantastic stuff, some free stock art, Mini BX SRD, a lot of great stuff, including Mini BX, and you can also get Gymnology, which I have on my shelf. Pacts and Blades is only $10 for the PDF of that. And you can find Pacts and Blades on a bunch of spots. I think Ratty and Katati, Soul Muppet, all sorts of stuff. They are, unless I'm completely talking my ass, I believe they're a big part of the RPG LATAM community.
Yes.
Yeah. As is Guntijo. So, great stuff. I think we talked about Dead Horse. What do you got? You got anything else brewing that you wanna talk about? Anything you just want to shout out here at the end?
Yeah. Guild Sword of Magic for Hire is coming out very, very soon. I will be publishing the digital version of it this week, probably. Fulfilling it for backers and then publishing it immediately after, and then hitting print. And then we've got Dead Horse submissions close on Monday night. So gimme stuff. Uncanny Horror doesn't have to be RPG related. Submissions at disastertourism.games. We've got a new skirmish game that is about to be finished already. And I'm very excited about that. It's currently in private playtesting, but it's going to be amazing. Got a lot of other stuff in the works, but that's all for now.
Very excited for all that stuff. The Disaster Tourism, Kirby makes great stuff. Definitely go check out all that stuff. It's really nice to sit and be able to talk to you about this, especially as someone who's actually created a lot of games, actually put stuff out and really dug through, and is a great part of the community as well. It's really nice to sit down and really dig, especially in these shorter ones where we have a little bit more time to spend 35 minutes on the core mechanic. It's really nice to do these little zines sometimes, even though we do like doing bigger games. But great to have you on again, Kirby, as always.
Thanks.
We are the Weekly Scroll Podcast. You can find us at Twitter at weekly_scroll. That's where you're going to find out what we're playing next and find a lot of that stuff. On the.weekly.scroll on Instagram is where you find all of the scores for all of our games, and all of the the Twitter will give you future, Instagram will give you the past, and please go to the Adventure Archive on YouTube. That is the umbrella organization here that Weekly Scroll falls under. We also do APs. We also do a bunch of other stuff, so go check that out. And hit that subscribe button. It really helps us out. We would appreciate it. And check everything out. That is us. That is our episode. Hunter will be back next week, and I believe the plan as of right now is to finally do Blades in the Dark. So we'll see how that goes, and we will see you all next week. Kirby, once again, you're wonderful. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And goodbye, everybody. Bye.